I'm really impressed with the way that many of you have adapted the EarthRanger mobile tool to collect the data in different situations. So we have teams counting whale sharks, doing marine enforcement, running patrols on land and on sea. And this data is coming in steadily and adding to your database. And that is really great, but as conservation practitioners, ultimately we want to turn that data into conservation action. We want to make change with the data. So it's not good enough just to collect the data and have it sit in our laptop and our cloud database and essentially gathering dust. So my presentation today is about how we can go further from where we are with our data collection, and how we can actually turn data into decisions for conservation. I'm going to talk to you today about a tool called Ecoscope, which is not brand new. It's been around for some time now, but it may be new to some of you. Ecoscope is a tool that allows you to turn your data into information. It allows you to see the data. It allows you to create reports and visualizations of your data that can be then shared as information with people who can make decisions. So for example, we do these patrols. We do patrols and we collect information. We see illegal fishing. We see marine debris. We see marine wildlife. We see critically endangered species. So what do we do with that data? So I'm going to talk to you today about how we move from this side, from the real-time operations where we're collecting data and monitoring what we see in the web platform, to here, where we're analyzing our data and looking at what it means and turning that into reports that can be then used to change things. So I'm going to talk to you about also how we bring data in from other sources. For example, many of you are using SMART for patrolling. How can we bring that data in? How can we bring that data in from other sources such as Skylight, Global Forest Watch? And how can we aggregate that data and then bring that into our analysis framework? So I'm going to talk to you today about Ecoscope. And Ecoscope is designed to help you to make better decisions with your data. It's built around the premise that you want to turn the data into actionable intelligence, actionable information for management, so that we can then take action and make change. We want to ask questions, and we want to have indicators of what is happening. So what are the trends in the data that we're seeing? What are the trends in the encounter rate with snares? What is the trends in encounter rate with illegal fishing? What about the trends in numbers of whale sharks that we're encountering? The idea is that we have information, we have data, we turn it into information, and then we are going to save time in what we used to do before, which was to export data into Excel spreadsheets and do manual summaries of data. We don't need to do that anymore. So we're going to talk about this tool, and I'm going to show you some examples of how it works. So the Ecoscope mission, we have a team within the EarthRanger global team that is working on Ecoscope. And they are a full-time team. They're scattered across the globe. How many people do we have in the Ecoscope team, Jess?
Probably 10.
Yep, we've got 10 people who are working full-time on building this tool and incorporating feedback from users so that we can improve it all the time. And now this is available, and some of you are already using it. So it starts with a question. When we go into the field, we want to really be driven by wanting to know something about our target, whether it's the whale sharks or whether it's the tamaral, whether it's the Palawan peacock pheasant. We approach our data collection with a question. So Ecoscope allows us to think about the questions and then turn those questions into insights. So for example, where are the conflict hotspots happening? Where are those places on the map? And where are they in relation to settlements and movement corridors? Knowing this information, being able to create a map that shows us where things are occurring, we can then take action. We can then send patrols out, we can set camera traps, we can create early warning alerts. So we start with a question, turn it into insights using Ecoscope that allows us to take action. So the raw data that allows us to address this question comes from our patrol logs, locations of where events are occurring, surveys that are conducted, and incident reports. All of these things are things that we can create in EarthRanger, and they feed into our insights. So, for example, maybe we want to know, we're doing a study of wildlife. We want to know where are our animals in the landscape or in the seascape. Perhaps we're interested in human-wildlife conflict and coexistence. So where are the conflict hotspots? In terms of operations, how effective are our patrols that we're doing? And how can we make the operations and those patrols more effective? So better questions leads to better conservation outcomes. And increasingly, we need to be efficient at the way we spend our conservation resources, because money and effort is really scarce, and it's really important that we make sure that we spend our limited conservation resources in the most efficient way possible. So we start with questions, and these can help us to be more effective, come out with better outcomes. So for example, if you're doing operations, many of you are running patrols, doing marine enforcement, some of you are doing community-managed patrols in important areas. So in the context of doing operations, operating conservation areas, what are the patrol efforts? And here's an example from some data that's come from East Africa. And Ecoscope is able to create summaries of data that tells us, okay, here's the number of patrols in a certain period of time. Here's the total time effort that was done with patrolling, distance traveled by patrol teams, average speed, maximum speed. So we can create these summaries of data using Ecoscope. We can create maps that show where patrols happened and where events were recorded. We can also do analysis. So for example, maybe we're interested in knowing what is the encounter rate with illegal activity. So how often do we encounter snares, and is that changing through time? So we can create indices that allow us to understand what the situation is, and we can track that through time with creating these visualizations and reports. So we're now turning our EarthRanger data into analysis that allows us to figure out what is happening and where should we patrol next. So knowing where patrols occur, we know where the gaps are, where patrols haven't happened in the last month, and where we could go in the next month. So using a map like this can actually help us to decide, okay, in the next 3 months, we've got to fill in these gaps here, and we've got to send teams out there. So we can use this approach for strategic patrolling. How do patrols affect poaching or illegal fishing over time? So one of the things that we want to do is to make sure that our patrolling is actually making change. Is patrolling leading to decreased threats? Is it leading to less threats? And is wildlife responding positively to the reduced threats? So over time, we want to see what is happening. And here's just an example of an analysis where we see a declining trend in the encounters with signs of poaching. And this is an example of what I'm talking about, we can create these visualizations, we can create this really basic analysis that tells us that things are changing, and we can look at the trends. So where should we patrol next? We can define our own questions. So for example, maybe we're interested in creating a table showing the efforts made by different patrol teams or rangers. We can create these patrol reports, and then we can understand what people have been doing. And all this data comes from EarthRanger, potentially. We can create these reports that can then be shared with decision makers who can then make decisions on what needs to happen in the future. So we can define our own questions. So that's operations. And one of the things is, how do things change over time? We're able to use EarthRanger and Ecoscope to create bar charts that tells us how things are changing through time and through space. And here's some examples of analyses that show trends in snares and the breakdown of what is happening through time in terms of encounters with different types of snares and different types of traps and where they are occurring. And we can create reports that tells us the incidents and where they occurred. So what happened when we encountered a vessel at sea that had some illegal gear and what was associated with that vessel, or poachers' camps and what was detected at those camps and what happened as a result of the intervention. Numbers of people arrested, confiscations. So think about the situation where you're doing operations. What are the questions that you want to answer? You can do this using Ecoscope. So wildlife monitoring. Maybe we're interested in tracking an endangered species. Maybe we have information from tracks and signs encounters, or maybe camera trap data, or maybe we have some collars on an animal that we've been using to track its movements. So we can create summaries of the data using Ecoscope. And here's an example of some data that's been brought in from snow leopards, GPS-collared snow leopards. This is actually a real example from Mongolia. This is real data, and this data has been summarized using Ecoscope. And we can also track individual animals, and we can see the activity patterns of those animals. This is data from the GPS collars of some snow leopards, and shows how activity of these animals is changing through time. Some animals are active, and their activity changes through time, depending upon the season and where they're moving and where they're denning. All right, so for those of you who are working on wildlife, you can create various different types of insights from analyzing the data using Ecoscope and creating information about home range patterns, movements of individuals, whether animals are active during day or night, the movement state. Are animals moving from place to place? Are they staying in one place? Are they hibernating? We can get very, very detailed information. So around the world, we're working with partners who are doing this with their vulture data, for example, in Cambodia and in Mongolia. Mentioned the example from snow leopards. People are also doing this with elephants in Thailand. I'm just mentioning examples from Asia, but this is also happening in other regions. So with these insights that come from the data analyzed in Ecoscope, we can then take action. We can decide what needs to happen in terms of management to improve the conservation of these species. So these are the things that we're doing, we can do now with Ecoscope. What species are captured by camera traps and where? Here's an example from surveys in Africa, and this is a breakdown of the camera trap encounter rates with different species of large mammals. And we can see how things change through time, and we can see what's happening through space across the area where these camera traps are operating. So we start with a question, we collect the data, we turn the data into insights and analysis that allows us to then make decisions. So here's examples of Ecoscope workflows. So what we've done here is we've created a workflow, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples of workflows in just a few minutes so you can see how this works. So all of this analysis has been done using Ecoscope, and these reports have been created from real data. Yeah, so other insights can be, for example, if we're doing surveys, we're interested in doing biodiversity surveys, and you want to know in an area how many species there are, is a species present or not, what's the trend in total animals, are there any seasonal trends, what's the preferred habitat of these animals. We can get these insights from the data. Using Ecoscope, we can create visualizations that show us what's happening, and then using that information, we can then bring that to decision makers and we can take action. Okay, if you're doing environmental studies, if you're studying climate change, if you're looking at changes in water availability or temperatures or precipitation through time, you can analyze this kind of data using EarthRanger. You can capture it, NDVI, so trends in forest cover. This is data that's come from East Africa, where they're looking at the ranging patterns of elephants in relation to changes in forest cover and vegetation cover. So all of this data is real data, and it's an example of what we can do using these analyses and insights that come from Ecoscope. If we have data from Global Forest Watch, which allows us to record fire and detect changes in forest canopy cover, we can take that data for your site and you can see how things are changing through time. So if you're interested in looking at seasonal or long-term fire patterns, we can do that by capturing the Global Forest Watch alerts, fire alerts, and we can import that into EarthRanger, and you can do an analysis of that fire data in Ecoscope. So I'm just showing you some examples, and I'm going to actually do a hands-on example in just a few minutes. So this is the last type of data that I wanted to present, human-wildlife conflict and coexistence. In many places in Asia, burgeoning human populations, wildlife is being forced into smaller and smaller areas. It is coming out and it's moving into human areas, and people interact with animals and sometimes in negative ways. So for example, in Thailand and Malaysia, there's a lot of human-elephant conflict, and animals are coming out of the forest and they are interacting negatively with people. There's crop damage and there's property damage and people get hurt. So we have communities who are now empowered to collect data. So one of the examples, which you can see on the website, on the EarthRanger website, is the early warning system for human-elephant conflict from Thailand. There are about 7 NGOs and government organizations working across 5 areas in the country, and we have supported those NGOs to train more than 200 farmers and rangers, and those volunteers have collected data that is now being used to create maps showing hotspots of human-wildlife conflict. So this is really useful information that decision makers need to have. Where are people getting hurt? Where is crop damage happening? If we want to compensate communities, we need to have data. We need to have data and also understanding of what the data is telling us. So that's where Ecoscope is helping us. So these are all examples of visualizations of data where we create information from the data. Here's a table showing compensation for damage caused by different wildlife species. And this is created from the EarthRanger data, crop rating, density. So we can create this information. So how can I get started? So Ecoscope is a tool that allows you to pull your data from EarthRanger, and there are two ways to use Ecoscope. There's a web platform that you can log into, and you can also, there's a desktop app that you can download. So if you're interested in trying this out, we recommend that you start with the web platform, and we can share the link with you, and you can go to that web platform and you can create your own free account, and then you can get started. So with Ecoscope, you define the data source, and the data source is your EarthRanger database. And then you can create these things called workflows, and then you can configure those workflows to produce the visualization that you want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you an example of what this looks like. So, all right. So here's an example of what Ecoscope looks like. I've actually logged in to this account here, and when you log in, there are some things that you see across the top. There are these things called My Workflows, and in the middle there you have what's called a workflow template. So currently there are 4 templates for creating what's called a workflow. Event details, event workflows, subject tracking, and patrols workflows. So I'm going to start with patrols workflows. And for example, if we have patrol data, we simply select the patrol workflow. We then select the data source. We click Next. We give it a name. I'm just going to give it something very simple. The data source is our EarthRanger database, and I'm going to select the last few days of data, 28. So I'm just going to create a workflow based on the last 3 days. And maybe we have different types of patrols. Maybe we have foot patrols and routine patrols. Maybe we have marine patrols. I'm just going to leave that blank so that we get a report on everything. We can also group our data according to different types of things. So maybe we want to group our data by time or by space. So for example, maybe we have different management zones within our protected area. We can select spatial category or time. So I'm just going to leave that blank for now. And we can select these things called trajectories. I'm going to leave that as that. For the purpose of this example, I'm just going to create a very, very simple report. I'm going to run that. So then once we're happy with the So if you make a mistake and it says, oh, I need some more information, it'll tell you what it is. So in this case, it's asked me for the category, and I'm going to select patrol subject. So patrol subject is like the ranger team or the ranger group. Oh, it's going to ask me for the time intervals. So then one more thing I can do is to select the day, as the time interval. So we're going to get a visualization that shows us how patrols change from day to day and by subject. So I've created this workflow, and then it asks me to run the workflow. I'm going to do that. And once the workflow has run, if it works, it'll say success, and then I can click on it and I can see what it's produced. So while that is running, I can look at some of the other workflows that are already been, it's finished there. So we'll click on that. So there we go. So this is our patrol report, and what it's done is it's created a visualization by subject, and the subjects are these different ranges. So I can go and I can look at Archie. Let's see what Archie did. So Archie did 3 patrols, and there's his patrols right there. And we've got a summary of what he did over the last 3 days. So total time, total distance, and where he did his patrols. So it's created a very simple report that shows me where he was. These are the track logs of his patrols. There's the time density map. This is a heat map of his patrols, so I can see where he spent most of his time. Next to the coffee cafe, right there. There's another cafe right there. Archie likes his coffee. I'm just kidding. So we can see some really basic information about Archie's patrols from this visualization. And we can see that all the patrols were of one type. These are all radio reports. So then if I want to see another person, I can select another subject. I can go and see what Antony Lynam did. All right, so Tony did 2 patrols, and there's his patrols. And these are actually one marine patrol that I did the other day with the Blue Alliance, and another patrol over here. So these are the patrols that I did. So we got a summary of what the ranger or the group did, and we can then use that for measuring our efforts, and we can also get information on what was detected. So those patrols, I didn't actually record anything. Let's go to one of the workflows that Archie has created. Let me check this one here. Here's a workflow that he's created based upon data here. So this is, in this case, what Archie has done is he's created a workflow for each month. So this is the month of April, and in the month of April there were 6 patrols done. We've got some summary statistics there. We get the information on where those patrols occurred and the concentration of effort. So it's just a very, very simple visualization. This is the month of June. Actually, let's go to May. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so there's the month of May. So this is a simple workflow for patrol type data. So let's see a second one. And I'm out of time, so I'm just going to show you this really quickly. But we can also summarize events. So here in this example, this is an events workflow where we're breaking down the things that were observed on the patrol, and we can then see the breakdown and what it's composed of. So here we have examples from patrols that happened in several places. So there are snares, there's points of interest, there's livestock depredation, injured animals, wildlife-human contact, fires and fences. So these are the events. So we're doing a report based upon the the actual observations that happened during the patrol. So it's just a very simple one showing the map. So we see where the events were detected and the counts of events. And we get a breakdown of what was detected. So these are two really quick examples to show you how you can turn your data into insights that you can then use for sharing with decision makers. You can create very detailed visualizations using what we call groupers. So you can group your data based on time or category. You can group your data based on the rangers or the people in the field, the observers. So it's very configurable, and it's very straightforward and easy to do. So I would encourage any of you who have data and are not using Ecoscope to jump into this, and we can help you set this up. It's very simple to create your own account in 30 seconds or a minute, and then you can start looking at your data and start turning your data into information that can be useful. So hopefully that's been useful for you, and this is the beginning of the conversation about Ecoscope and how you can turn your data into actionable insights. So I'll stop there and open up for any questions. Thank you. Yes, so the URL is app.ecoscope.io. And if you just Google Ecoscope, you will get to the web page. And from there, you can create your own account. So we can actually... So, Ecoscope. This one here. Whoops, it's just gone back there. Let me just log out. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, any questions?
Do you have any questions for Toby?
All right, so I encourage you to have a look at this website. Some of you are already using Ecoscope. For those of you who have already started, we're here to help you to move to the next level. And those of you who have not yet started, we really encourage you to have a look at this and start to look at the ways in which you can start to examine your data.